Welcome to MSBA's Get On Board, some tips and timelines for school board candidates. I'll be your host. My name is Greg Abbott. I'm Director of Communications for the Minnesota School Boards Association. And again, we'll be talking about what school board members need to do for their upcoming elections this fall, whether you're an incumbent running for re-election or any new candidates who are thinking about running for school board. The School Boards Association is the go-to organization for Minnesota's publicly elected school boards. We've been around as a nonprofit voluntary organization since 1920. We offer a variety of services for school boards. We offer legislative help, policy services, board development, and superintendent search, strategic planning, many others. Once you're on the board, all of these services can be offered to your school board. We are also the primary provider of professional development for school boards. We offer a free annual conference up in Minneapolis every year. We also have our summer seminar that's coming up in August. And we also have some good connecting, networking ways for you to meet other school board members through our coffee and conversations webinars and also our board chair chats. So what is a school board? The school board basically is a body of locally elected individuals who represent your communities. And your power and authority are granted by the state. And your purpose is to ensure an effective, efficient, and equitable delivery of high quality education to all of the school district students. And I mean all. That means no matter the race, no matter the religion, no matter gender identity, you are there to support all of the students in your school district. And you do that through adopting policy. And the other major task is to hire, direct, and evaluate your superintendent, who does the day-to-day work in your school. So when people ask, should I run for the board? My first question is, why do you want to run? And if you can check off some of these things, I think that'll help you decide whether or not you should run or not. And the first one is, are you concerned about more than one issue in your school district? If you're running just because you feel your son or daughter should have got more time on the basketball court and you're mad at the basketball coach and want to fire the basketball coach, and that's the reason you're running, what happens in 6 months later when maybe the coach is gone? What are you going to do the rest of the 3.5 years? So it's important that you're concerned about more issues, all of the issues in your school districts. And public school districts have a lot of issues that they have to consider, especially over 4 years. The second one, again, is, are you concerned about helping all students achieve? Students achieve when they feel welcome in their school, when they have standards that the teachers can teach and reach those goals. And so your goal is to help all of these students, every single one of them, get through the graduation date and have success either by going to college, going to a vocational school, or achieving a job once they graduate. Are you interested in problem solving? A lot of issues that school boards tackle are very complicated. There's state laws in the mix. There's rules from the Department of Education in the mix. There's budget concerns that have to be balanced with what you want to do. They are very complex. They'll need a lot of research, and it'll take a lot of problem-solving attitude from all of the board members involved. And lastly, do you want to be a member of a team? A school board really is an executive team that helps take a big picture look at your school. You're going to be helping to set goals for the district. You're going to be helping set the policy. And you're going to be working with your superintendent, who is also part of your team. In Minnesota, superintendents are ex officio school board members. Ex officio meaning they don't vote, but they are still part of your team. So you're going to be working with your superintendent so he or she can go and implement your ideas and do the day-to-day work in your district. If you can't check any of these items, I guess the last question is, why are you running? And to think about those reasons why. So what qualities make a good school board member? And of course, the top one is you're going to have to be focused on student achievement. And I mean a laser focus, because you're there to help those students be successful, no matter what they do. If they go into a job field, if they go on to college, your goal is to help them get there. You have to be passionate about public education. And I go back, we just finished a history going back 100 years of MSBA. And the really interesting thing that I found is back when we founded our state, there were two buildings that every community put up, a church and a school. And that foundation of offering a free public education to everyone, that's really what made our nation great. A board member should also be able to make difficult decisions. I talked about how some of these decisions are very complex, and they are difficult. You can't be kicking them down the road. Some of these things have to be decided by your board, and it may be controversial, but you're going to have to be able to work together with the rest of your board team to make these decisions to improve the education for your students. You have to be strong communicators who are willing to listen. Once you're on the board, it's important that you listen to everyone in your community and also be able to communicate what the board is doing, what your board is working on, and most importantly, why you are doing it. To educate the people in your community about what does a school board do and why are they doing it and what's the purpose. You have to believe in the democratic process. That may seem to be pretty obvious, but this is a tough thing. It goes back to Robert's rules when he was coming up with ideas on how should governments run, how should businesses run. And through a board, he picked, again, since our country is a democratic country, he picked a democratic process, which means you bring all your ideas to the board table. You make your case known at the board table. But once that decision is made, the school superintendent has to follow the decision of the majority. Sometimes you're going to be on that majority, sometimes you're not. But if you believe in a democratic process, you will give that majority decision a chance to succeed. You also have to be willing to spend time and energy on school board business. This is not a job where you just meet once a month or maybe 9 times a year to approve an agenda and go home after an hour. There are lots of committees that you might be part of. Again, these issues are complicated. It takes research, it takes diving into the information and a lot of discussion among your other board members. That is a lot of time and it's a lot of energy to be on a school board. Part of that time and energy is on governance training. We say board members should be lifelong learners and set that example for their students. Your education didn't end when you left high school. You learn things on your job. And this job as a school board member is where you can learn to build a better board, to be a more high functioning board so your students can succeed. And lastly, are you able to function as a team member? School boards aren't 6 or 7 lone rangers going in 6 and 7 different ways. A school board has to work together. Again, it goes back to the democratic process that you make your comments known, you make your opinions known, you make your case, but once that decision is made, you have to work as a team to see if that can be a success. So if you're new and have not been a board member, how do you become a candidate? It's fairly easy in Minnesota. You're elected during the November general election on either odd or even years. There's very few school districts. We have 331 of them. only 27 of them are in the odd year. More than 300 are going to be this year in the even year where they have their election. All terms are for 4 years, unless you're filling out a term for someone else, and then that's a special election for a smaller amount of years, maybe a 2 or 3 year term. And at least 3 members will be on the ballot. Boards can be 6 members or 7 members, but at least 3 members will be up for election every 4 years. So, or every 2 years. So most school board members are elected at large. There are a few, probably about 14, 15 districts that have wards or precincts or areas of the school district where people are elected from. But most of the school boards are elected at large, meaning you represent all of the citizens throughout your district. So if you want to file for candidacy, again, it's fairly easy. The filing period is going to be early August for those without primaries. And those dates this year are going to be July 30th to August 13th. So if you're viewing this, maybe it hasn't come up yet, maybe you're in the middle of the filing period, or maybe it's over, but that's the filing period where you can put in your hat if you wanted to run for school board. All it takes is filling out an affidavit of candidacy form and $2 to file with the school district clerk. To be a school board member, there are requirements. You have to be at least 21 years old. You have to be an eligible voter. You must be in the school district at least 30 days prior to the election, and you cannot be a sex offender. I put a note at the bottom of the slide because if you work for a school district, you can run for the school board. But if you earn more than 20,000 in your fiscal year and you win the school board seat, you have to decide whether I want the job at the school district or want the job on the school board. You can't be on both if you make more than 20,000. Financial reporting. This is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. When I first came here about 20 years ago, it was rare that people ever hit this $750 limit on what they either received or spent on their campaign finance campaign. Now it happens a lot. Just an ad in the paper or making a few signs, you can hit the $750 trigger very easily. And once you either received or spent that amount, then requirements come in for you to file a campaign finance report. So that's one thing you have to file. The other thing you have to do for all candidates, and it's no matter how much money you've raised, at the end of the campaign after the election, you have to file what's called a campaign financial report certification of filing 7 days after the election. It's a very simple form. It only has one yes or no question. Did I make the $750 limit or did I not make the $750 limit? And that's all it asks. You turn that in and you're done. Those forms are found in your campaign finance manual. When you go to register to be a candidate, you'll receive one of those. It's from the Office of the Secretary of State. And if you don't, all those forms are on the Secretary of State's site that you can download and fill out. So I put up an example of the certification of filing, and this is the form I was talking about. It just asks for your name, what you're running for, and then whether or not you made the $750 and you'll have to file campaign financial reports, or whether you did not exceed $750 in the money you earned or spent. So it's a pretty simple form that you'll turn in. And again, if you did hit more than $750, this is the longer campaign financial reports that you'll have to file. And there's multiple times throughout your campaign that you'll have to turn these in. Then they state how much money you've raised, what you spent it on, what the purpose is, and all those instructions are on this form. Again, it's in your campaign finance manual. So what are the fundamental roles of school boards? And again, the school boards are really effective when they focus on big picture items. The boards make the policy that helps the superintendent and the staff and the teachers run the school. The school boards are effective when they set goals for the school district. Every district should have some sort of strategic plan. And if you're a new candidate, it's really important to find out what the school board's strategic plan is and what are those goals in the strategic plan. And a better question is why they set those goals and how they're moving toward accomplishing them. The other thing that you will do is you are the closest to the people in your district. And you'll probably be interacting with the stakeholders in your neighborhood, at the grocery store, no matter what. You'll be hearing comments about what's going on in the school. And you can be that sounding board for your superintendent and the rest of the board as issues come up. Another important duty, and probably a big one, is that the school boards hire, direct, and evaluate the performance of a superintendent. They do the day-to-day management. You oversee that superintendent. You make sure that their goals are in the evaluation. You evaluate them every year. Maybe you need to tweak something. Maybe you need to change something. And those contracts you'll look at and hire. They're usually a 3-year contract. And you will be able to direct the superintendent what you want to accomplish in that next year. School board members really are an ultimate elected volunteer because you have to be concerned with the welfare of all those kids. And once you're on the school board, every child in your district is now part of your family. You're all going to be there wanting them to succeed. Are you part of a board team that has oversight of school district decisions? So that's, again, the point of you set the policy, you set the goals, but you're also the monitoring agency. So at the end of the year, if you have an initiative, you're going to want to review it and see, is it working? Is it successful? Does it need to be tweaked? Or is it not working? What do we need to do to change it? Another thing you'll do is attend required training. In Minnesota, school board members are the only elected official that is required to go to training. And they want that training for human resources, hiring, and also in financial training. That's something that MSBA can offer. And why is that? Why are school boards the only one that are required to get that training? Is because school boards are trusted with not only your kids, but also your pocketbooks. So it's important that your board have a good knowledge of what those statutes are, how budgets are made, what the hiring laws are, what open meeting laws are. There's a lot of laws involved in what a school board can do. School board members don't run for the school board to get rich or to have a job. There's very little compensation for school board members. And again, despite that, you are held to one of the highest ethical standards of any elected official. You're the local people, the people in your neighborhood who might know you live next door. And they're going to hold you to that high ethical standard again, because they're trusting you with their kids and their pocketbooks. School board meetings are also subject to the open meeting law. So public entities have to do business in the open unless there's an exception that allows them to close it. All closed meetings start as open meetings. There's only 6 exceptions allowed for a board to close a meeting. So again, all of your business is conducted in the open. And the public has a right to observe open meetings. They have a right to observe them. They have a right to know when they are and where they are. They have a right to look at all of the materials that are given to the board outside of the private data. So there should be a copy of those materials at the board meeting. But again, on the other side of it is a public meeting is also a business meeting of the board held in the public. So there is no right for that the state gives for people to speak at a public meeting. However, many boards have a public participation policy to allow the public to speak at their meeting. And that's a courtesy that the board offers to the public. They don't have to do it, but all of the school districts in the state have it and offer it because they want to hear from their public. A special meeting comes up when maybe your board meets once a month and there's an issue that needs to be decided and it can't wait till the next month. So special meetings are something that have to be called at least 3 days in advance and be posted 3 days in advance to tackle that issue. And then again, for an open meeting to take place, your quorum of your school board members must be present, which is the majority of your board has to be there. When you get on the board, you will be trusted with not only the information that you're deciding in the open meetings, but you'll also be trusted with a lot of information that may be data sensitive, that may be confidential, that may be private information on students. And it's very important that school board members maintain that privacy and confidentiality of that data. If you do not, you will open up yourself and your district to court cases and court lawsuits. So it's very important that if you receive confidential information, that it stays confidential. You will also have a lot of public records because once you're on the board, what you say, what you email, what you text, all those forms, however stored, are now could be accessed by the public. They are recoverable. Email, in fact, we recommend that you use a separate school district provided email address for school board correspondence. And why do we do that? If I have a personal email and I'm doing school board materials and something comes up and there's a Freedom of Information Act that wants to look at all the emails on that topic, now I have to give them all my email from my personal account and my school district account. And that's why we recommend that you have a school district account where you conduct your school business. Because if that ever happens, that way they would have access to your school district email addresses, but not your personal email. And school board members should follow school district policy. There's lots of policies because there are a lot of laws around how school boards should act and be regulated. And in the 200 policies, if you're new to a school board, that's where I would look. There's about 12 policies there that determine what is on an agenda. How does a school board member put something on an agenda? How do school boards determine what committees are on there, and how can I put in a request to be on a certain committee? Everything about how your board runs are going to be in those 200 policies. And these are something that you can view on your district website to see what the process is for how you work with your school board. And some of that work includes communicating with your stakeholders. And again, it's more than just your parents or your students. There are a lot of communities where there's a huge majority with people who live in the school district who have no kids in the school. So it's also the people who don't have that day-to-day interaction in your school, who may have had kids in the school but don't anymore, or maybe they are just living there and they have not stepped foot in your school at all. But they're all your stakeholders, and it's important that you communicate with them on what your board work is and why you're doing it. You're also there to monitor student achievement, and that's one of the main things that a school board can help provide guidance and set goals for how your students are doing, figure out if there is a problem, where that problem lies, how you can go about improving things so you can get all those students across the graduation line. As part of a board, you're also dealing with bargain employees, and you have to deal with their contracts every couple of years, you may have a negotiations committee. Maybe the full board meets as part of the negotiations committee. Sometimes maybe a couple members of the board and some superintendent and staff meet on that committee. Or sometimes it's just simply a superintendent and staff who meet to bargain those. But in the end, you have to approve all of those contracts. You are also in a position as a school board member for advocating for your students to your lawmakers. Gone are the days of simply caring about what's going on in your own district. You need to find out what your needs are. A lot of things that you do are determined by the state. I was surprised when I first started looking at working at MSBA, and I had my text binder that was as big as a small continent, and it was full of state and federal laws regarding education. And there are a ton of things that the state sets in law that determine how your board works. So if something isn't working right, or if you need to change things, it's important that you advocate to your legislators. It's a big part of your job now. Lastly, evaluating your superintendent. When you evaluate anyone, it's important that you have very clear goals set for them so that when you evaluate them, you can evaluate them based on the goals that you set. Maybe those goals will change. Maybe there'll be new goals, but it's important that you evaluate the superintendent and keep things moving because they are your day-to-day person on the goals that you set overall. And for your school district, you are part of, and for many towns, one of the largest employers in the community. And it's a big responsibility. There's 850,000 students in Minnesota and over 200,000 teachers. So again, you're dealing with a lot of employees, a lot of people. It is a big job. So at MSBA, we teach our 5 standards for school board leadership. And we look at it for conduct and ethics. We have the vision, which is really your strategic plan, your structure, your accountability, and advocacy and communication. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that code of ethics. And that's, again, one of our policies. It's not a mandatory, but we offer a template so boards can agree on how they are going to conduct themselves at the board meetings and away from the board meetings. One of the first ones is to be prepared for the board meetings. There's probably no worse situation than seeing a board member come in and rip open the packet of information at the board meeting when they should have looked at it beforehand, and then end up asking a bunch of questions on the issues that would have been answered if they would have read the material. So it's important to be prepared for the meetings and attend the meetings. You're going to be focusing on student achievement. Hopefully your board does not break down into bickering across of what I want to score points on this other board member, and he voted against my idea this time, so I'm going to vote against their idea that time. It's got to be a focus on student achievement. It shouldn't be a focus on you. It shouldn't be a focus on your opinions other than at the board table. And at the board table, you should be looking at student achievement. You're going to be focusing on the greater good. Sometimes that's hard. If I'm a parent, I have a student in swimming, maybe swimming is going to be on the budget cuts because the district has to make budget cuts. I may not want them to cut the swimming program, but when I look at the district overall for the greater good, what has to be cut to keep the services going at the school, that may have to be one of the programs that gets cut. So as a board member, once you're elected, you have to focus beyond your neighborhood, beyond your personal needs, and focus on what's best for all the students in that district. And again, you represent all stakeholders in the district, and you support the decision of the school board. We talked about this again, and it's a hard thing to do. You've got to make your case at the board table, but if I come up on the short end, I'm going to have to agree. I'm going to go with the majority and give it a chance to succeed. Remember that you're on the board, you monitor things. So at the end of the year, if it's working, that's great. Because guess what? Sometimes I can be wrong. In fact, my wife will say I'm mostly wrong. But again, it goes back to that whole idea of supporting the board decision and monitoring the outcome. Because if I'm on the monitoring end and some things aren't going right, maybe they do start tweaking it and it falls more in line with what I had suggested. So again, it's always important to support that decision of the school board, even though it's a very, very hard thing to do. And then again, follow the school board code of ethics policy. And I mentioned this is not a mandatory thing. This is something that all board members need to agree with. There's very few times that as a school board member, you need consensus on everything. But for this, you need consensus on, because a code of ethics policy that isn't being followed by one or two members is basically a useless policy. For this, everybody needs buy-in. And if they don't agree on something, you have to have that discussion to say, do we take it out? Or what will you agree to in this code of ethics policy so that everybody is following it? Because your students are looking to you too, and don't think they're not. If your board meetings are all bickering and they last 5 hours and go till midnight, and you're not following this code of ethics policy, they know about it. And you got to set the example. So this is something that you should review anytime you get a new member, maybe every year. Say, are we going to follow this ethics policy and how we conduct ourselves at the meeting and away from the table? And again, remember, once you're elected, school board members have power only when sitting together at the board table. As a single person, you don't have any power at all to make decisions. It has to be a majority of the board that makes that decision. And if you promise something and the majority doesn't agree with you, you're going to be making bad promises. So again, your power as a board member is on the majority when you sit together at the board table. The second one is respecting the school district's chain of communication and responsibility. I think sometimes board members really earnestly want to help everybody solve their problems. And that's a good attitude to have. However, a school board member is probably not always the right person to try and solve everybody's problems. What I like to say is you have in your district this chain of communication. So my job as a board member is to direct people to the people in the school district who can solve their problem. I'm more like the traffic coordinator. I'll say, if you got a budget problem, I can direct you to the CFO. If you have a problem with a sports team, I can direct you to the AD, the athletic director, the coach, and make sure that I copy in the superintendent that there's a concern, here's who I directed the person to, so you know about it. Thirdly, that successful school board must function as a team with clear strategies and goals. I mentioned a strategic plan. It's a very important part of what you do as a board. You are setting the goals for what you want students to be able to do a year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. What do you want schools to look like? How well do you want them to perform? That's all in your strategic plan. And those goals and the why of those goals and how you are implementing it and accomplishing it is very important part of your job. MSBA offers professional development. School board members, again, are required to receive training in finance and management. Those are part of our Learning to Lead orientation series. We also go beyond that. We offer sessions on how boards can work together. We offer sessions on policy and, again, on community engagement and dealing with your community. There are many different workshops and professional development opportunities that you can take to help you keep or improve your high-flying, high-performance board. Most of our financial and management training, we also work with the Minnesota Department of Education on. So it may be referred to as phase 2, which is our training for that, has that mandated piece in it. And those are done in conjunction with the state, so you can learn a lot of the laws and regulations that you'll need to know when you're on the school board. So if you're new, how can you be ready to join the school board team? And I always look at these three things, and that's I'll meet with the superintendent or the school board chair. Learn what the expectations of what school board members in your district do. Maybe run through some of those 200 policies on how your board operates and what you're working on. I'd start attending board meetings if you haven't already. Find out what issues they're dealing with, what's coming up, what are some of the issues that are going to be big on the minds of people in that next year or 3 or 4. And then familiarize yourself with the district's strategic plan and its goals, because again, that's a very important document. And you'll want to know what those goals are, how the board has come along and working on those goals, and what can you do to help move the district in that direction. So when you're elected, when does your term begin? In state law, it says the first Monday in January. And that's when you have your organizational meeting to select your officers and usually put people on different committees. This year, that's going to be a Monday, January 6th starting date. Some of your campaign timelines. So here's what you can expect. Again, we talked about the filing for office date, July 30th through August 13th. You have a couple days after that to withdraw. You need $2 to apply. I would read through the Secretary of State's campaign finance manual. It's online, or you'll get one when you file for candidacy. If you receive or spend more than $750, again, those campaign finance reports, you have to file within 14 days. You've got additional reports you have to file 10 days before the election and 30 days after the election. So I'd get a person who can handle your campaign committee, who is up on that, who can file those reports in a timely fashion. So election day this year is going to be Tuesday, November 5th. And again, you have 7 days after that election day where the school canvasses. You have 7 to 10 days actually to canvass that. And after the canvass, you can request a recount. So election day is November 5th. The district has 3 to 10 days to canvass after that. Once they're done canvassing, that clock ticks in. If you want to ask for a recount on that election, you have 7 days after the board canvass. Again, you have to file your campaign finance certification filing 7 days after the election. And if elected and you turn that in, you will receive an election certificate. And you have 30 days to sign that certificate and sign the acceptance and oath of office for that seat. And again, we go back to campaign finance report, because after the election, 30 days, you have to file your final one if you made more than 750. And again, your term begins January 2025, unless you want a special election to fill out a term. If you're in that instance for a special election, you just begin when you qualify, which means you turned in that certification to file form, you've signed the election certificate, and signed the oath and acceptance of office. So some of you who take over for a special election could be starting in late November or December instead of January. But for those on a 4-year term, they all start on January 6th. Well, thank you for listening to this webinar. Again, it's being recorded, so people who are considering running for board can also view it. Elected board members, candidates, feel free to call MSBA. I put our website down there for information, our phone number, and my email address if you have any questions. So feel free to contact me. Again, thank you for considering running for school board. I know it is a daunting job, and I appreciate everybody who is on a board and is running for school elections, because again, it's a lot of work and we appreciate you. Thank you.